So, having discussed the introduction and giving you the characteristics of children with autism spectrum disorder and the necessary practices that will make them more independent, let's get started with the education of children with autism. How do we educate these children? Educational approaches in autism spectrum disorder begin to be provided in early childhood. These approaches use different teaching strategies, including the use of reinforcement, opportunity teaching, to teach spontaneous communication and specific skills. Considering that different countries use different standardized tests and methods for the treatment of autism spectrum disorder, the intervention program used may also differ slightly. These programs, as the environment in which the intervention is implemented, could be creating variability with different arrangements, such as home-based or institution-based, school-based, structured environment, and natural environment. So while some interventions are classified as comprehensive interventions by incorporating many developmental areas into their curriculum, some interventions focus on a specific area of development. In this context, we will talk about different educational approaches now. Let's get started with the behavior modification model. Educational programs based on the behavior modification model are generally used in the education of autistic children, and this model is often based on operant conditioning principles. According to the Skinner, operant conditioning is defined as the process of increasing or decreasing the likelihood of behavior through the systematic arrangement of consequences. In the behavioral model based on operant conditioning techniques, the following steps are given importance: antecedent, behavior, and consequence. In detail, what happens right before the behavior, the action that is observed, and what happens as a result of the behavior. More specifically, the current performance of the child is determined, and it is determined in which areas that there is a lack of skill. After the skill deficiencies are determined, these skills are divided into sub-levels. The subject of education is discussed in two parts. In the first chapter, the precautions that parents can take regarding the infancy are discussed. In the second part, it has been tried to explain the basic skills that should be given to these children and to gain these skills to develop speech and finding solutions to behavioral problems.
So what we are trying to achieve in behavioral modification model is basically the followings: to enable them to overcome the inadequacies they have, reducing behavioral problems, developing self-care skills in those children, as well as to gain academic skills that will be very important in their future life, and try to ensure that they enjoy life as much as possible, and when compared to other children. So now let's concentrate on the infancy period from this model standpoint. We have emphasized that the most distinctive features encountered in infancy are the lack of social relations, such as the child's introversion, indifference to his environment, and lack of interaction with people. The baby may not look at her mother at all and may not respond to her speech while she is walking around or feeding him. He may even seem happy when left alone. Sometimes mothers think that their babies like to be alone and are not aware of their surroundings, and they reduce their relations with their children in order to not to disturb them. However, the mother's decrease in her child's interest may push the child to loneliness and introversion further. In order to be able to help her baby in this period, the mother especially should be the active person who initiates and maintains the relationship and tries to be closer by ignoring the baby's lack of response. She should call his child by name, hug him, take him in her arms, and whisper beautiful words and songs in his ear. The fact that the mother establishes a relationship with the baby in this way and allows her to look at her own face will both please the baby and the mother, and it will enable the relations to develop in a positive way. Increasing the mother's relationship with the baby will be a good start for the following years to come. Furthermore, the mothers with autistic children often talk about feeding and sleep problems related to infancy. Feeding problems weaken sucking in the first months, and it can be seen as difficulties in switching to solid foods in the following months. And there could be some chewing difficulties in advanced ages as well. A small amount of solid food can be mixed in between the liquid fluids and that the child basically likes for an easier transition to solid foods. Then, depending on the acceptance of the new food, the solid food can be increased and the liquid one can be decreased in the mixture. After switching to solid foods, it is natural to encounter chewing problems. Therefore, the foods that need to be chewed should be introduced to the child gradually, and very hot foods and whole bites should be avoided at the first. In addition to feeding problems in some babies, severe insomnia problems also put parents in a deadlock. The baby cries every night, does not sleep, and for such sleep problems, it is very much necessary to make the child comfortable first. Some children like to sleep in the dark, some in the light. So it has been observed that some children hug their quilts tightly and can only sleep when their tops are tightly covered. It can give good results in rocking the child standing up. From time to time, a family member or friend who knows the child very well could stay with him so that the parents who are in a continuous pursuit can be rested. So how can we teach these basic skills in behavioral modification model? Parents can easily teach their normal children daily skills and social relations. However, they need information and guidance on how they can teach their autistic children the same skills. The purpose of this section specifically is to guide parents in their children's education. Normal babies, when learning a skill, can understand behaviors that adults approve and disapprove by first evaluating their mother's tone and head and facial movements. They understand the words spoken at later ages and learn new skills with the help of these words. Another important way for children to learn is to imitate an adult. Children with autism can only make limited use of these three ways of learning. In addition, intense behavioral problems prevent them from acquiring these new skills. For these reasons, many people think that autistic children cannot learn certain skills. However, autistic children can indeed learn many skills thanks to the appropriate educational environment and programs prepared considering the characteristics of the child. There are some basic points that parents and teachers should consider when starting the education. To begin with, when working with autistic children, the child's problem behaviors should be reduced and positive behaviors should be encouraged and developed. To teach new skills, we are supposed to do it by dividing them into small parts and stages, while failing the child should be avoided as much as possible. The best way to do this is to try teach a skill such as hand washing by breaking it down into steps such as turning on the tap, getting your hands wet, and getting the soap. The child will learn by starting from the easiest stage and will move to the next step as soon as he is successful. This will prevent them from failing. So we are starting with the simplest one and complicated in time. The child should be also helped to ensure success during each new skill acquisition. First, the help should be in the form of making the skill completely, and then this direct help should be gradually reduced. When teaching hand washing, the mother or father initially helps the child by standing behind the child and placing their hands on the child's hands. The assistance provided here is in the form of washing hands together. Then the assistance is reduced to holding the child's wrist, holding the arm. Another point that we need to focus on is getting to know the characteristics of the child very well. Knowing his unique learning problems, competencies, and inadequacies is an indispensable prerequisite for being successful in studies. During these studies, to make them learn new skills, rewards should be used to accelerate the learning process of the child and increase his success. For him, the reward is for the work he has done right. Rewards can be things the child enjoys, such as a favorite food, a pleasant game or toy, or any behavior. While working with the child, it should always be determined what, which foods, which activities can be used as a reward. Well-chosen rewards will be the biggest help when trying to teach new skills, especially using food if the child likes food and does not have any eating problems is the quickest and shortest way to teach new skills. On other types of rewards, including reading a book, going to the park, and cuddling, can be also used as the child learns the new skill. However, if a child's favorite food is used as a reward, it should not be forgotten to cut into very small pieces and to use different foods from time to time. It is also necessary to accept from the beginning that children with autism are different from their normal peers, and their learning speed is slow compared to them. While working with the child, little or no progress may be observed in his skills, even after a long time. This should never be discouraging, because even if it seems that he has never learned, after a while it can be noticed that the child has gained a new skill. After summarizing the points to consider when working with the child, let's now consider where and how to start the work.